Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 145. As always, I'm joined by Dom.
Praise the sun.
Praise the sun. No Jordan this week, so it's a two-man show, a Fireside Groove. I don't remember the last Fireside Groove me and you did. Usually, most of the time when it's a Fireside Groove, it's me and Jordan.
Yeah, but I don't know.
It's been a while. Anyways, let's hop into what we've been playing. For me, didn't play a whole lot, but I did... Had I already talked about finishing Katana Zero? I did, right? I think I said I talked about that last week. I had finished it for a couple of weeks. I just don't ever remember mentioning it. Been playing some Magic the Gathering Arena. The new expansion came out. Been dabbling away with that. Having a blast. The crazy thing with that game, and I don't think I ever mentioned on the podcast, Dom, is... I've explained Magic the Gathering. I think you're familiar with it. But in the digital card game, kind of like with Hearthstone, you can get card backs for your decks, right? And they usually have like cool designs or whatever. They didn't have those in Magic the Gathering Arena at the beginning, and they recently introduced them. Long story short, there's colors in Magic. It's all about the colors, the fire, water, grass, all that. When you combine them, there's these guilds that they represent. So like red-green is like a very aggressive deck. You have a lot of fire and forest, so it's like a lot of big creatures that do a lot of damage, right? They have themes to the color combinations, and they have names too. Don't need to get into it. Anyways, they release card backs for each of those color combinations that are called guilds. So, like, if you're really into playing blue-white decks, you can get, like, blue-white card backs. And there's a package you can get. You can't buy with in-game currency. You have to buy with real money. It's not too expensive. But you get the card backs. You get, like, some special cards that fit that. So, like, if you're into blue-white, you'll get, like, some really awesome blue-white cards. And a couple of other perks. So, it's like a package for you if you really love that color combination. It's pretty cool. I wish it was available through in-game currency, but, it's a free-to-play game. They have to have some hooks in there that have you paying real money so they can make money, and those are, like, the real good hook, right? It's always the cosmetic stuff. The cards you get in those packages, you can completely craft those yourself, so they're not, like, behind a paywall or anything. They're just, like, an added bonus to, like, on top of the card backs, you get those too. But, yeah, it's just a really cool bonus to the game. Like I said, I wish they were available through in-game currency, but they're not. The little bit of time I had with Sekiro, I'm in Fountainhead Palace. I'm assuming you've already beaten the game, right?
Actually, technically, no. But
okay.
I've done all the work except fight the very final boss to beat the game. And so now I'm actually just spending a bunch of time farming the skill points to get that trophy. But, yeah, I've put it to the end, not beaten it quite yet.
So, yeah, I'll just tell you where I am, so that way when you talk about whatever you've been playing, we can avoid spoilers or whatever. So I'm currently at, when you get into Fountainhead Palace, you fight the corrupted monk, and then you go down to the bottom area where there's like the big like lake with the like destroyed buildings.
Yep. In
that big lake area. I'm in the second section of that. So there's like the first section where you first find out about the weird old... They remind me of Seat the Scaleless a little bit. They kind of have the same design.
Yep. I had the same thought.
Yeah. So there's that first area where you first are introduced to them, and then you get to the ending part where there's all of the electric dogs, and then once you get past them, there's the first checkpoint in that area. Well, I guess the second checkpoint, because there's the checkpoint after the straw dude. There's the checkpoint right after the corrupted monk across the bridge, which is a very weird checkpoint. And then there's the third one of like when you first enter the big connection of buildings. That's where I'm currently at. So, yeah, enjoying it. I just didn't have a lot of time with it this week. I was able to get there. Couple of things I want to talk about with you in terms of side character quest lines. Did you do the Black Hat quest line? Black Hat's a little troll merchant guy.
Yeah, so you kind of have to, I feel like, because you need that... Maybe you don't have to. You need that puppeteer skill, right? The puppeteer ninjutsu. Maybe you don't need it, but yeah, I did that. So
because you get to the point where he needs the kite raised up. Obviously, you use the puppeteer ninjutsu. You have the guy do the kite. You jump across, and that's how you eventually kill one of the two snakes. There's a second snake kill, right? I haven't done yet, so... but that's how you get the one that's wrapped around the pole or whatever. And then after because I looked this up, so I already know that like one of the bosses I'm eventually going to face is the Divine Dragon or whatever. I didn't look up the boss intentionally. I was looking at Black Hat's questline, and they're like, you'll find him after you. He'll pop up where he was before, after you defeat the Divine Dragon. That's all I read. So all I literally know is that I'm going to be fighting the Divine Dragon, and then I'll end up finding him where he once was at that market area, not down near a tree or whatever.
Okay. Gotcha. I did not do that. I don't know the end of it then, so I guess I've not finished that part.
Because I wasn't sure because when you talk to him after you do the kite thing, he's like, well, I'm going to... You find him right before you kill the snake, right? And he's like, at his son's grave or whatever. Yep. And it was like, oh, it didn't seem like this was the end of his quest. Where does he end up? So I read it, and I accidentally spoiled myself for the Divine Dragon. Still don't know what the boss looks like. I've steered clear of spoilers. I just know that I'm going to be fighting that boss, obviously. The other revelation I found, and I'm assuming you found it too, so I'm going to be very vague, and then you can clarify if you know what I'm talking about. Dad, have you seen the revelation of who Tengu is?
Maybe
Tengu is a tall guy with the mask that names you Sekiro.
Right.
Yeah.
And he has you go and kill the rats or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then what does he do after that? I don't know. I don't remember.
He either stays there. It depends on how, because the game's like non-linear, so it's like depends on when you do stuff. So for me, he was always in that building until he disappears. For other people, depending on when you do the Sunken Valley, he's there, and then he goes to, right before you enter the Sunken Valley, there's those like two huts where like you jump across the ravine to get that item, and you jump back, and there's like a rat dead in there. He'll pop up there. It's like right before you enter the Sunken Valley. It's like, I
might have missed him there then.
So at Ashina Castle, when you leave Kuro's room and you meet Ishin, and then you go down, and there's the shortcut down there where there's like a big lake, and underneath there's a headless in the lake.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So you know how you go through that gate and you go down, and there's like a pathway with a bunch of monkeys, and at the end there's a little hut. He can pop up there depending on when you do quests. Yes,
because he... shit, I don't know if I should say it, but he... You're right. You get something from him. If you've not gotten that yet.
Do you know who he is?
No.
Okay, so I know who he is, and it's kind of obvious. Next time you run into him, or if you can, fast travel to wherever he is, and look at him. Do a close look of him.
I might have. I might be beyond that possibility. I don't want to say too much more.
Yeah, so you don't know who he is at all?
No, I don't think so. No.
So explain to me why you think you're beyond that possibility. If it's very spoiler for me, then don't say it. But
yeah, things happen there, man.
Does that have to do with Tengu?
Yeah.
So I don't want to spoil it for you if you don't know, but so I'm assuming Tengu dies, right?
I couldn't quite tell. I think so. When you go after you finish and you beat the Divine Dragon, and obviously you already know that you're gonna have to do that at some point. But
yeah,
after you do that, everything changes in like Ashina Castle and the outskirts. Like there's just big changes to those levels.
Yeah,
that's all I'll say. Right. So at that point, when you go back to that shrine... So it's technically, sorry to interrupt you,
it's technically a third change, because there's like your initial run through Ashina Castle, then all of the purple rats, so this is a third change.
Yep, it's yet another change, and some more things are going on. So once you go back to that shrine you're talking about, right before Sunken Valley, you get there, and that dude is dead, and there's another guy, another one of those like lone sword, vile hand, whatever they're called, the purple, enemies, and he's a mini-boss, and you fight him. So that's what happens there.
So here's the thing. I haven't done Divine Dragon. I already went back to that shrine place and I killed the purple dude. So I don't know if my quest line is different because Tengu wasn't there dead. So because I think since I fought that boss before defeating the Divine Dragon, I wonder if it's different then.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go look up this quest line. Now I'm like way too curious, and maybe it was flipped, and maybe like he was the one that killed some other guy. But they both looked like purple. I don't know.
Tengu isn't in a purple suit. Tengu has a white mask and it's like orange and green. He's very tall.
Okay.
As we're recording the show right now, live, can you Google him to look at him?
Yeah.
Just go up Tengu, Tengu, so you know what he looks like.
Oh. Because I know...
Because there is a dead body where that purple ninja is, and he says, I killed this guy or whatever. It's not Tengu's body.
Okay, I think that's what I'm thinking of then. Yeah, okay, he's got like this orange mask on and that. Yeah, so he gives you something. Did you get anything from him in that shrine?
He gives you a technique thing, right? Like not ninjutsu, but like a
whole
doesn't
skill
he give you
tree?
like a skill tree? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what I got from him. So maybe he leaves that place, and then there's some other dead people there that
he gives you that after you kill the trolls, the little like hat dudes.
There's
outside of the castle. Yeah.
So yeah, once you get like once you get enough points for like Shadow Rush or any of the other like final skills, he gives you a brand new tree entirely after that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not really a spoiler. Don't worry about that.
You would have got there. Yeah.
So I don't want to spoil it, but just since he's not technically dead, take a look at him closer whenever you get a chance if you do see him. Maybe he's not there anymore, so I don't know if you'll get a chance to see him at all again. I don't want to spoil it for you is the thing. I could tell you who he is, but I don't want to spoil it for you.
Just say it.
He's Ishin.
Really?
Yeah. And there's a tell because one of the times towards the end when you're talking to him, he coughs. And when you go to talk to Ishin, he's coughing. You end up finding out because one of the big questions is how does Ishin calls you Sekiro? Ishin would have no way to know that your name is Sekiro.
Yeah, I didn't think of that.
And Tengu is the one who names you Sekiro when you run into him the first time.
Interesting.
So it's him. Or at least that's my assumption. I haven't actually Googled it to find out. But even his hair is the same, like the little like top bun thingy. Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. It's just that when you run into Tengu, he's standing and he's like very tall, right? And like intimidating. And when you run into Ishin, he's like an old man and he's crouching down and he seems smaller than he is.
Well, as I Googled him here, when you first run into him, when he asked you to kill the rats, like he's wearing a mask, like a wooden mask. Yeah. So that would explain why they have him wearing a mask.
Exactly.
He doesn't want you to know who he is, apparently. We should stop talking about it because I think there's more here. But yeah.
Those are the two things I want to talk about: Tengu and Black Hat. I have a glitch, I think, with one of the quest lines. So you know the big guy kind of near the kite that asks you to give him the pinwheel, and then he asks you to deliver him from evil or whatever.
Yep.
Kill him.
Yeah.
You're supposed to use divine whatever it is on him, right? And it triggers for him to like leave somewhere else. It doesn't work for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've tried it. I've even looked at videos of people doing it. I do the same exact thing. It's not working, so I don't know if my thing's bugged or what it is, but yeah.
Must be. There's been a few patches, so maybe that's something.
I mean, he's not a character I really care about, and I don't know if I'm going for like the completion yet or not, so it's like I'm not super interested or care about him necessarily. Yeah, I'm enjoying my time with it. Gonna try to beat it this week, especially with like Rage 2 coming out. If Rage 2 gets like good reviews, I'm getting it. If it's like Days Gone, which isn't bad, right? But it's not like necessarily like great. It's like it's kinda, if Rage 2 comes out and it's getting like Days Gone reception, I probably won't pick it up at launch. But if it's anything more than that, then I probably will. We'll see. Who knows? I still need to get to like Gears 4 before Gears 5 comes out this year. There's a lot of stuff.
Oh man, you haven't played 4?
I haven't gotten around to it, no.
And it's good. I really liked it.
I know I'm going to enjoy it, just I haven't gotten around to it. That's pretty much it for me. Did I watch anything of note? No, I've started reading a Redwall, though. I don't know if I'd already talked about that. Book's really cool. It's dark. That book split up weird because... So, have you ever tried reading any of the Game of Thrones novels, Dom?
No, I plan to, but wanted to wait.
Until they're done. Yeah, same. But I was flipping through it because I was interested with the first book, looking at it. And George R. R. Martin labels his chapters by character. So there's like Arya chapter 1, Jon chapter 1. and it helps him deliver the narrative through their eyes, right? It's a really cool structure for a book. I think that's why they're so good, is because he does it in such a unique way. Redwall kind of does the same thing, except they don't label the chapters that way, but like one chapter will be from Matthias, the main character's perspective in the Abbey, and then it'll cut to the main villain in the next chapter, and then the next chapter will be a different character in the Abbey, but it's not Matthias. It's a really cool storytelling structure, I guess you would say. And the way the book is specifically structured is it's 3 books in one. So there's like, inside it would be like, oh, book 1 is telling you the story of Matthias, then book 2 is like the battle, right? And then book 3 is like the aftermath. So it's like books inside of a book. So I'm currently in the second book, which is like when the battle's about to start and stuff like that. So really enjoying that. Did I play anything else? No, just Magic the Gathering and that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. What about you?
So we talked about Sekiro. I've still been playing a lot of that. Like I said, I'm at like the end, and I'm excited. It brings up the interesting topic. I think I mentioned it last week. So I'm doing that thing where like you back up a save file and then play through one ending, go back, reload your save, and play through the rest of the endings, because I don't want to play through the game 4 times just to get each of the endings. When they're more or less spoiled for you as you I don't know if you got to this point yet, but they kind of present themselves, the different possibilities for how you can finish things off.
Yeah, the branching paths, essentially.
Yeah, and so, like, as you're going down them, like, you know what you're trying to do, and so it's presumably that's the outcome of each one. So it's not like, some revelation at the end when you do it, necessarily. Unless there's more to it, I don't know, but I'll see. So, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, because that's something like... like Bethesda games or Bethesda Studios games, like that's built in, right? In Skyrim, you could just back up as many saves as you want, and then redo a quest how you in a different way, kind of stuff. So it's just interesting, and luckily on PlayStation and Xbox, and assume one way or another on PC, you can kind of manipulate that manually as much as you want and back up saves. So I don't know. I'm glad that's a possibility, I guess, so I can see all these endings and get all those trophies, because Lord knows I'm addicted. But yeah, so I'm excited to be done with Sekiro and see all those endings. Otherwise, I was telling you I watched Winter Soldier. It was a really cool movie.
Yeah.
I got too much to add on that. It's older, obviously, but I obviously watched Game of Thrones. Been enjoying this last season quite a bit. We could go on that for days if we wanted to, but otherwise, the last thing I'll add is I watched the new Netflix special for on Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy.
The special or the movie?
I guess it's a movie. I don't know.
With Zac Efron?
Yeah, the Zac Efron.
Yeah, it's a movie. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a thing on Netflix. Anyway.
Yeah.
That was really good. It was super, super good. Very entertaining. Not at all what you think it might be, unless you've read a lot about it, but it's a very interesting take on that person. I really liked it. I could see why people would be upset about it, though.
Yeah, the issues people have with it are probably the things that I would be most interested in watching a Ted Bundy movie for. So for me, it's not like I'm not interested in watching it because, like, it doesn't seem to nail the things I would be interested in watching the movie for, right? Not that I don't think it's a good movie or enjoyable, but it kind of like, oh, I'm out on it then, because it's not necessarily the type of movie I want to watch, But I understand people's criticism. It's when you're telling a story about that type of person, it's like, do you go for the more entertainment route? Do you go for the more, like, I wouldn't even say specific, it's more like authentic, right?
It's super authentic. So one thing they do, and I can't spoil it because what I'm saying literally it is authentic, so it's yeah. Spoilers been around for decades. But one thing they do is, during the credits they start playing, actual footage, not of anything, like from like the court case and some other things, and they did a lot of scenes like word for word, how it was in real life, and that's super interesting. And so it's really, I don't know, it was super good. Like if you're not like someone taking a hard stand against it, like definitely watch it because it's super fascinating.
Yeah, and just like some of the complaints were like Lily Collins' character, that it didn't seem like she was really told in the way that represented the real life person that well, in terms of like dealing with Ted Bundy. I don't know. It's a very interesting case in terms of why people liked it or disliked it. It's very mixed. Yeah, it was very interesting hearing about when that movie came out and the critics and even just people watching it, how it was mixed. There's obviously people who took very hard stands, which I'm not a fan of, you know. But the people who were giving constructive criticism, it was very interesting to read what they had to say in regards to it. But you enjoyed it, so that's good.
Yeah, it was super entertaining. So that's everything of note, I think. So yeah, a lot of Sekiro, just tons of it.
You're not getting Rage 2 at launch. So what's like your next thing you're going to be tackling? Do you even know what you're going to be playing next?
Yeah, well, I'll save that for later in the show, Jared.
Oh yeah, okay, I forgot what we're playing next. Yeah, you want to take a guess at what Jordan's playing? He's not here.
Oh yeah, that's right. That
game.
Yeah, that little game he wants to play. It's something. It's gonna be something stupid. It's gonna be like Diablo 3 or something. Like, what the hell are you doing? I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. What's the Telltale Borderlands game?
I thought that was it. No, Tales from the Borderlands.
Tales from the Borderlands, yeah, because the pre-sequel is an actual like Borderlands game, just a pre-sequel. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll find out next week when he joins. Trying to think if there's anything I missed by chance. Oh, this is one thing I wanted to tell you about. So I know you're not a huge comics guy. There was a comic this week that I read that was arguably the most heartfelt comic. I'm going to tell you about it because you'll probably never read it. So it's Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man #6 by Tom Taylor. Great writer, done a lot of good stuff. He did this comic where on the front cover, Dom, it says Spider-Man. Oh, it has Spider-Man. And it says introducing Spider Bite. It's this little tiny Spider-Man, right? Like a miniature version of Spider-Man. And you're like, oh, they're introducing a new character. Who is it? Is like the kid version of Peter Parker? Is like an altered dimension thing? Is it this like kid that gets powers? Like, what is it, right? Because Spider-Bite's a brand new character for this comic. And anytime they introduce a new character, it's not always like a grandiose thing, but a new Spider-Man is like kind of important, right? So the story starts off and you don't really get an explanation as to who Spider-Bite is. And Spider-Man and this other character are going in, fighting all of these villains, chasing him down. Then it ends up culminating in them finding this room full of like all of Spider-Man's main villains. He's like, what is it? It's a Sinister Six. And they're like, it's a Sinister 60, right? They start fighting him. It's a typical, you know, Spider-Man comic. He's teaming up with a buddy. Then like halfway through the comic, it starts peeling back the reality of what you're seeing in the comics to like more of like a stage, kind of like Toy Story 1, right? Where there's like buildings made out of cardboard and there's like clouds cut out of paper. And it starts revealing the background, like what's going on here. And it eventually gets to the point where you realize that Spider-Man spent the day with a kid who's in a children's hospital. And the kid was dressed up as Spider-Man. And it was them going through the adventure together. So it was kind of like his imagination going through it. And it shows like all the stuff they were doing. Huh. And it was Spider-Man spending the day with this sick kid. It's like very heartbreaking and very sad. It's great though. Like I'm actually kind of tearing up talking about it because it's just such a great comic.
Oh,
and
that's
like
cool. That's not where I thought you were gonna go with that.
yeah. It like gut punches you, man. And the parents are like, "Thank you for coming and spending a day with him." And then like they're finished doing what they're doing. And the kid's like, oh, I want to continue playing, and the parents are like, oh, Spider-Man has to go, he has to fight crime and stuff, yada yada yada. And the kid's like, no, and he like lashes out, right? And the parents are like, I'm sorry for him getting so angry. And Spider-Man's like, it's okay, I understand. And he starts to walk out, and he's walking after he gives like, you know, talks to the kid or whatever. He starts walking out. The parents are explaining like, we're so sorry. He just has a tough time going. We have a tough time for him getting rest because he's afraid that if he goes to sleep, he's not going to wake up again. And that's awful, right, to read. And Spider-Man's like, turns to them and he's like, does he have like a coat or something here? And they're like, yeah, why? And then it cuts to him with the kid in his arms swinging through the city. I was just like, oh man, it's like. It's one of the best comics I've ever read because it starts off as like, oh, this is like hokey, tropey, like they're introducing this side character. Who cares? We're not getting a backstory. That's weird. Oh, he runs into all the villains, all these shenanigans, blah, blah, blah. And it's very tropey, but it's tropey for a reason because it's a kid's imagination and a kid directly goes to tropes, right? Especially the sick kid. and it's like revealed that he was just spending the day with his kid. Man, it is so good.
Yeah.
Even me telling you it, I really recommend. I could put it in our thing, and you can check it out when you get a chance. Just reading it, it's a really good comic, man. And I know you were surprised, your guy. That's not where I expected it was going. I don't think anybody did when they were picking up this comic, man.
That's really good. I mean, that's really clever. That's smart.
It's good. It's sad, but it's really cool. That's something I wanted to talk about. I completely forgot about it, and I wanted to mention it because it's like I read comics for entertainment, obviously, and there's good stories, and there's a lot of cool things happening. But like when you pick up a comic, you start reading it, and then you're like, oh God, and you're just like, oh, emotional. It's great. Tom Taylor is he did a really long run of all new Wolverine X-23, Laura Kinney, and he blew up because of that, because it's like fantastic. It's arguably like one of the best runs for Wolverine, right? Obviously it's not Logan, but it's the female Wolverine, and since then he's like done a lot of good stuff, and he's been writing Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. And Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, the reason it's so special is the first issue of it, Peter's doing his own thing, and it's directly opposed to Aunt May going to the hospital and finding out that she has cancer. So it's a turn of the tables of her hiding that from him, right? His whole life he's tried to hide Spider-Man from Aunt May, and it's her trying to hide that she has cancer from him. It's really good. Tom Taylor's like a very good writer, and this, I guarantee you, by the end of this year when they start doing comics awards and stuff, he's gonna clean up with that number 6 with the kid. So good.
Man, that one sounded a lot like PS4 Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, I guess spoilers for PS4 Spider-Man. She actually doesn't die from cancer. She dies from like that mutagen, whatever the hell. And it isn't like she's immediately dying. It's not like a Breaking Bad situation. Like you have X amount of months to live. It's just like she's told like, oh, you have cancer, And it's just a really cool thing of seeing her hide something from Peter when his whole life he's hid something from her. It's really cool.
This is, I love Spider-Man lately. Even just you talking about that comic and such. Like, for one, it's making me realize the Raimi movies. I thought I really liked them. I mean, they're kind of like the lower tier Spider-Man content nowadays. I feel like Homecoming was so good, and Insomniac's Spider-Man was so good. I still have to see the Spider-Verse one, but everyone seems to love that too. And I'm getting real hyped for Homecoming now. So
Far From Home. Yeah. And man, that trailer, it has spoilers for Endgame, but that one tugs at your heartstrings too. God,
I've not watched the trailer yet because I gotta see. So now I'm going to see Endgame, so I'm like, I might as well just wait.
Yeah, it's a great trailer. Spider-Man's. I don't know if you remember, me and Jordan had that argument on the podcast when I was saying that they don't hold up, and he was saying he thinks the Raimi movies do hold up. I personally don't. And we had that long discussion. Yeah. It's very. I love those movies when they came out, but in retrospect, like they are kind of like hokey, And Homecoming is so good. I watched Infinity War like 15 times, and personally for me, the end of the movie when Tom Holland's Peter Parker is in Tony Stark's arms saying like he doesn't feel good and he doesn't want to go and he's sorry, like that stuff gets me, man, so much. Spider-Man's good. We're in a good place with Spider-Man, which is great. Spider-Verse is really cool. I think you'd like it. It's obviously Miles Morales, not Peter Parker, but it's a very well-paced, just solid movie. That's it for Spider-Man talk this week. So let's get into quickie. We don't have a lot of quickie news. We have 2 major reveals that happened this week. We had the State of Play from PlayStation, and we had the Ghost Recon Breakout reveal. Obviously, we only knew that it was a Ghost Recon reveal, and we later got the title. But in terms of quickie news, so 1, EA Access is finally coming to PS4. It's coming in July. There was some discussion on the internet. Some people were kind of upset because it's going to be the same price as the Xbox version, but there's inherently less value in the service. Because if you don't know, Xbox has backwards compatibility, which allows them to put the Mass Effect franchise, the Dead Space franchise, Skate, like all of their old games on the service alongside their other offerings for current gen and new titles with their 10-hour free trial. PS4 doesn't have that. So when you're paying the same price, you're inherently getting less value because you don't have those. I am of the opinion that I necessarily wouldn't be mad at EA. I'd be mad at PlayStation because it's not EA's fault that backwards compatibility games aren't available. On top of that, EA is simply testing the market to see if people care or not. You know, they're going to put it out there, and if people really care, then they're not going to see the numbers move the way they thought they would. But if people subscribe to it not even knowing about that stuff, you know, it's fine. You're making the same amount of money. So I don't necessarily have an issue with it. It's the normal EA train to jump on. I know some of it's justified. I get it. You are getting less value, but there is still a lot of value in EA Access, especially with you can hop in for a month, pay $5 and get 10 hours of a game to try it out in case you want to buy it, right? So you can spend $5, try out Anthem, and figure out if you like it or not instead of spending $60 and regretting it. I think that's value, personally.
Yeah, and you get their games early too on there, right? So.
Well, that's it. You get games early if it's like Madden or sports titles, or even Anthem. You get it like a week early, but you also get the 10-hour free trial. So it's like you get to try a game for 10 hours and see if you like it or not. And there's also games from this current gen on there too, free to play. There's like Need for Speeds and what's the Yarn game?
Nobody ever knows, dude. It's just the Yarn game.
Bound? No.
Unravel.
Plants vs. Zombies and all of that stuff. So I'm glad it's finally coming to PS4. I don't have a huge issue with it. What about you?
No, it's a super interesting thing. Because I hadn't thought of that, and so I saw someone pointed that out. Like, even if you said, okay, there's all that other value that it's included with it, so maybe like those handful of last gen games account for 10% of the value of that service. We'll say, I don't know, just making shit up, right? Obviously, it's subjective how much value it is, but should that mean that it costs 10% less on PlayStation? And who fronts that savings? Is it EA or is it Sony or I don't know. It's an interesting thing when you can get the same service on Xbox for you're getting more for the same price. So it's kind of why?
Here's the thing: it's $5.
It's interesting.
It's $5 a month, and it's $30 for a year. $30 for a year. Yeah, that's like.
So it's like, what are they going to make it $4 a month on PlayStation or something? That almost sounds dumber,
Yeah, it's like, so EA releases a lot of games. So even it's like if you pay $30 for the year, even if it's you're spending $5 to demo a game, that's 6 demos throughout the year. EA releases more than 6 games in a year, so it's like inherently just on that it has value. Plus, we're not even counting the discounts. If you're an EA Access member, you get discounts on EA games as well. So like you're saving money on the back end there too. I understand the argument. I think it's just people being hyperbolic as usual on the internet. Shocker, I know.
It's such a small thing either way. Yeah, it's not.
The fact that it's finally coming to PS4 is good because then that means that when PS5 and the new Xbox come out, EA Access will be on that from the start, we assume anyways. And because PS5 is backwards compatible, you'll have access to the PS4 EA games, right? So, I don't think it's that big of an issue. I'm just glad it finally came. It's weird that it took so long to come over to PS4, but as we've seen with PlayStation, they have a very walled garden approach to their services and just in general to their software as well. So finally it came. Next one, a Microsoft patent was recently found for an Xbox Braille controller. So they obviously did the adaptive controller, which is a huge hit for people around the world. There was a Super Bowl commercial, which was great. If you haven't seen it, definitely YouTube it and check it out. It's basically a controller that would translate speech and game dialogue into Braille. And people were joking like, why does somebody who's blind need to play video? How do they play video games? People don't understand that. Like, I think it's like 90% of people who are blind aren't fully blind. They have some part of the visual light spectrum that they can identify with. And you can be legally blind and still be able to see a certain percentage of things. Like, people think that blind just means that you see darkness. That's not true. That's actually like a very small minority of the blind community. And even then, it's like if somebody wants to, you can maybe have a single player game, plug in this into the second controller port, have them hold the Braille controller, and they can still understand what's going on. I don't know.
It's funny the question that you asked, right? Like, well, how could someone who's blind play games anyway? What's the point? Like, well, this is how, right? Maybe
exactly.
Maybe this isn't going to solve all the problems, and they're obviously not going to have the same experience as someone who has fully functioning vision. But like, this is, if nothing else, a step in that direction to make it games more accessible, right? So like,
yeah, and
I don't know why you would have an objection to that at all. I don't know.
We've seen Xbox and Microsoft's focus the last, I would say, 2 or 3 years. Their mission statement is gaming is for everyone. We've heard Phil Spencer say that numerous times. It coincides with their streaming future of them wanting Xbox on all platforms. Phone, tablet, everything. You can play games wherever. They want everybody to be able to enjoy gaming. Obviously, from a business perspective, the more people you have playing, the more money you're making. But also from a social and cultural perspective, the more options you have out there for people, the less they feel secluded from everyone else. That Super Bowl commercial is so great. It's a kid using the adaptive controller to grow closer to his neighborhood friends who he can't really connect with because he plays games slower or differently, and the adaptive controller allows him to get closer. I don't know. It's a cool move. Will this patent ever come to an actual product? Who knows? But it's cool that this has been in the works as at least an idea. So
they're trying something. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because when I first read it, I was like, a Braille controller. Not that I was like, oh, what's the point? I was like, whoa.
How does that work?
It like triggered my mind. Yeah, I was like, whoa, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good things. Talked a little bit about Xbox. Talked about PlayStation with EA Access. We're gonna go back to PlayStation. The first news story, we had the second State of Play. So the first one was in March. It was the one. What was the featured game for the March one? I know it was a lot of VR. What was the big thing? Was there a big thing?
Yeah, I mean, there was
Gone.
the Days Gone and like Mortal Kombat, which was
Mortal
nothing
Kombat
new.
was a big finisher. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dope trailer though. Really good trailer. Obviously, people were mixed on that one. We weren't as hyperbolic as people. It was fine. I think I brought up the argument. I think it's just expectations. I think they did a way better job this time. Though, one thing I will say, this isn't from my perspective, I'm just saying in terms of language, people read like a new game will be revealed, and obviously people's minds started racing towards a bunch of stuff. I assumed it wasn't going to be anything crazy because I don't think they would prop it that specific way. They said there's going to be an extended look at MediEvil, which is funny because I think we saw more of Monster Hunter World than we did of MediEvil, but there will be a new game, and then it'll be about 10 minutes. I enjoyed it. I thought it was the best State of Play yet. Thought it was very well paced. It met expectations in terms of what they presented that they were going to do. So I thought it was good. Before we hop into the actual content of it, do you have anything to say about it?
No. I mean, yeah, it was. They seemed to, except for that one line of a new game, they kind of should have at this point read through the tea leaves there and realized like, oh yeah, people are gonna get carried away with that and expect Horizon 2. But otherwise, they set expectations really well in the blog post revealing it. Right, yet only 10 minutes. They specifically pointed out, I thought was funny, there's nothing new on next gen because obviously that had been talked about recently. So they wanted to make sure like no one got that idea in their heads that they were going to reveal PS5 at this thing. So yeah, 10-minute thing, like it's like 10 minutes. Yeah, right. They're going to reveal the PS5. Yeah. I would say out of the whole thing, I'm going through my list. There was 7 things shown off. I would say most of them were awesome. I would say 2 of them were a little weird, and they were towards the end, and we'll get to those when we do. First off, it kicked off with the Monster Hunter World Iceborne expansion. Looks really cool. Part of me wants to get back into that game because I really enjoyed it. Remember when it came out, I was loving every moment of it. That's right.
It's just like those games of service type games. If you're not in it, if it's like a hassle to get back into it. Comes out in September, which is like right between Control and Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which we'll get to later. So it's like, I don't know if I'd want to jump into an expansion. We don't even know what major game's coming out in September. There will be one, right? Something will drop in September. Oh,
Borderlands.
There is one. Yeah, but I'm not interested in that. There'll probably be another game too. Who knows? We'll see. They showed off a new snow environment, which is cool. New monsters. There's like a giant like elk thing. There was like a snow shark. And like this other legendary dragon, Vakana or something. I know like Monster Hunter diehards were losing their mind probably. Comes out September 6th. The cool thing is they're going to be releasing it not standalone, but like you can purchase it if you already own the game. And if you don't own the game, there's going to be a $60 version that has the base game and this all in one, which is awesome. This is the best-selling game for Capcom in their history. It recently hit 14 million copies sold, which is crazy.
Damn.
Yeah. Monster Hunter has been hugely popular in Japan. Never really found a strong audience here because of how obtuse it was, and it was mostly on mobile. They brought it to the West. They made it a console, big RPG experience, and people fell in love with it. It's awesome. It's really fun. Next up, they had River Bond, which is like an indie pixel art dungeon crawler, releasing summer 2019. Excuse me. When I first saw this, Dom, I thought this was the game when they were like, a new game announcement.
Right.
I was like, oh, God. Not for me. I thought it looked like a fun game, but to like people who were like hyping up like, oh, this isn't going to go over well. Looked neat. Had a bunch of crossover skins from Shovel Knight, Lovers in a Dangerous Space Time, Enter the Gungeon, a couple of others that I can't, Bastion. But yeah, it looks like a really neat little indie game. Nothing special there. Felt very much like 3D Dot Heroes on the PS3. I don't know if you ever checked out that game, Dom. It was like an 8-bit Zelda type game.
Yeah.
Maybe not 8-bit, just pixel art. I don't think it was 8-bit specifically. The next game, this is I would assume this is the game they were talking about in terms of showing off a new game, because they announced a PS4 exclusive, Predator Hunting Grounds. This is a asymmetric multiplayer game. It's going to be releasing in 2020. It's from Ilphonic. If you're not familiar with Ilphonic, they're the guys who did Friday the 13th. The asymmetric Jason Voorhees a multiplayer game that came out, had some bugs, but people really fell in love with it.
Yeah, the camp counselors and the slashing and all that. Yeah.
People loved it. Had a lot of issues with online connections and stuff. I think with this being published by Sony, Sony Interactive Entertainment flashed on screen beforehand, so we know it's exclusive. They're working hand in hand with Fox, which is cool. So maybe they have some really neat licensing things they can do with the game. Bring in maybe characters throughout the Predator franchise, however they're going to do that. So essentially there's 4 hunters and 1 predator. It's probably going to be kind of like the setup with the Friday the 13th game. For me, it doesn't interest me. I think the game looks really cool for people who loved Friday the 13th and also love Predator. I'm just not into those like asymmetric games. I got burned enough with Evolve.
Yeah, me too.
But it did look cool. Like, I'm happy for people who like those type of games. It's funny. I don't know if they intentionally did this. I always like to think of like maybe developers like to screw with fans, but they knew they were going to be in the state of play, Dom, and they start off with like a very Uncharted looking thing, because it's like the close in on like the Mayan pyramid, and it's just that, and you're like, what is this, like Tomb Raider or like Uncharted, and then it starts zooming out and it's like soldiers, and you're like, is this like SOCOM or Meg 2, like what is this? And then they finally peel back to the Predator on the tree. Really interesting reveal. Cool for people who love this type of game. We assume this is the game, right, that they were talking about, because it is PlayStation published. This was the new game.
Think. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it looked fine. Once again, not super interested. Next up, this is the extended look we got. MediEvil Remake, releasing October 25th, 2019. So people who like this game, super great release date right before Halloween. Get your spookies on. For me, somebody who played MediEvil, I didn't dislike it, but it's just like a game. This is probably the roughest remake I've seen between this, Spyro, and Crash. And I'm like not knocking the people who are doing the remake, but like Crash looked incredible, Spyro looked incredible. This still looked rough, you know. We don't know how much budget they have. We don't know like what their directive was in terms of upgrading it, like do as minimal as possible, because, you know, how much is MediEvil going to sell necessarily? You know, so do you want to put all of that love into it, even though, I don't know.
I'll say, I know this came up a few weeks or months ago or whatever, but I don't know anything about this original game, MediEvil. I don't even know what platform it was first on, or, you know, that kind of thing. But when I was looking at, you know, when I saw the gameplay from the state of play, I just assumed that was the original.
Yeah.
And then it was going to, at some point, you know, switch and be like, oh, look how much better it looks now, but it never happened. And then eventually I realized, oh, okay, so that's what it looks like. Okay, sure. I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
If this is more than $30, it's gonna really hurt them.
Yeah.
If it's $30 or less, I think they can see some decent sales. It just didn't look very good to me in terms of a polish up. It just looked like I hate to say bare minimum because it makes it sound like I'm calling the developers lazy. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like it just doesn't look fully realized in the modern era. You know, I don't know.
I gotta think there's like a really cult following for this game or something, and they're just gonna be all over it. I hope. I don't know.
Yeah, if this ends up going on sale for like $10 down the line, I'll definitely pick it up. $10-15, but yeah, I ain't stepping near that thing. Cool release date though. I'll give it props. I love when horror type games come out around Halloween.
Oh yeah,
it's great.
Definitely.
Next up, this was a very weird game. So it was Away the Survival series. This game started and it showed a sugar glider running around this world, catching bugs, flying away from falcons, fighting a snake. And my assumption is like the whole game you play as a sugar glider and you survive. But Away the Survival series leads me to believe that you like switch between animals, but they never showed that. The entire trailer you were a sugar glider. And it's all about you surviving the environment. It looked fun but very rough. It doesn't look like the type of game that you'd maybe want to show at this kind of thing at the State of Play. It reminds me of, do you remember that game that they showed off at, maybe it was PSX, where like you're a small creature and you eventually, it's called like Life or something. You're a small creature and they turn to a bigger creature and a bigger creature and then a bigger creature. Or even that other game that was at the Game Awards where you're like the monkey that's trying to survive evolution. You remember that?
No.
You don't remember that? It was last year's Game Awards. It looks very rough, you know?
Yeah, it seems like it needs to be baked a little more.
Yeah, and I don't know if it didn't seem like it was PlayStation exclusive. It just was a weird game. Like it didn't look bad or good. It just looked like incomplete or like rough. The concept's cool. Like the idea of playing prey and predator and there's a food chain and you have to survive was cool. They just didn't clarify like, do I play the entire game as a sugar glider? Can I pick a different animal? Do I switch to different animals? They never made it clear. So it's like, why is the game called Away the Survival series if I'm just playing as a sugar glider? Doesn't make sense. They didn't really communicate that well. Then the next thing that I think was odd. So before we started talking about this, there was two things in this that I felt didn't really feel cohesive throughout the entire State of Play. One was Away. The second one was this Days of Play limited edition Steel Gray PS4 Slim.
Oh yeah.
The console looks cool. Nothing against the console. They did all this build up of like, it was a really cool build up, like sleek, and then it's just like a JPEG image of the console, and it's like, you can buy this console for Days of Play. It just felt very weird, especially being at the end of the show.
Like edited, kind of weird.
Exactly. And in terms of pacing, for me, I would love that to be at the beginning of the show. Like, because you start with the PS4 startup, hop right into that limited edition console, right? Because people are going to like that. When you go towards the end of the show, people are expecting, as like we see this weird Away game, we see MediEvil not necessarily looking great. But like, oh, the end of the show is going to be these really cool things. And for one of the two last things to be a console, not that it's bad, I think the console looks awesome. It just felt weird in the place of the show. And that's, I think, a speed bump they'll get through as this is their second State of Play. They did good on clarification before the show. I think this is another lesson in, hey, if we're doing a product, maybe put that towards the top of the show and get it out of the way instead of towards the end when people are waiting for the bigger reveals, right? Really cool console, though. I loved it. I love the black on black look.
It looks beautiful. Awesome. I love that logo with the the 4 buttons.
What do they call them? The sacred symbols.
Yeah.
Lastly, we saw the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I know on plenty of podcasts, this is going to be a huge deal to people. I'm interested in Final Fantasy VII Remake. I don't think either of us have an attachment to that game as most other people do. I'm very interested in it. Obviously, showed a trailer for Midgar, which is the beginning area of the game. We got clarification afterwards that the game's still going to be episodic, which, yikes. Hopefully, those are timed well and paced well in terms of release, because, like, man, Square Enix could release episode 1 of a game, and then you could wait 7 years for episode 2. We just don't know with Square Enix. They're all over the place like that. You never know. One thing that people were talking about is the UI got revamped. It looks different. The combat looks a little bit more refined, too. Obviously, we're coming off the heels of Final Fantasy 15, which is very mixed, and Kingdom Hearts 3, which was mixed but positive, but I think a lot of the issues people had was with the combat not necessarily feeling difficult or challenging. We've talked about this for on our own podcast. This feels like a mix between them. Who's to say how good it's going to feel? They ended the trailer saying that there's going to be more in June. People assume it'll be at the Square Enix conference. Obviously, it would probably be at Sony's conference if they had one. I don't know. I think out of the two major titles for Square Enix, Dom, would you agree that Avengers has a likelier chance to show up on Xbox's stage than Final Fantasy VII Remake?
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Especially towards Xbox's audience and everything. Like I said, I don't have a huge attachment to this game. I've talked to Jordan before about when this game gets a hard release date, I want to play through the original and then play this. But I'm happy for people who are excited. I will be more excited when we actually have a window. Square Enix games, man, I gotta have a window. I can't just get super excited.
Yeah. I mean, it looks really good, stylistically and graphically. It looks awesome, especially seeing some of the comparisons with the original.
Yeah.
Obviously, most things are going to look good compared to the original Final Fantasy VII, but this game, it looks super nice. The character models look incredible. But the combat, I'm kind of with you. I'm like, I don't know. We'll see. You're gonna have to. This doesn't prove anything, to me. I want to see what that combat's actually and the gameplay is actually going to look like. So this was sort of like, I don't know. We'll see. And then, but I'm with you on the release date too. I'm like, none of this matters at all because no one has much trust in Square as far as when they say something's coming out, and so when they say it's episodic, then you have even less trust in them. So
this might be a hot take, but Final Fantasy VII is a very old game, right? I think that these first couple of scenes we've seen for Final Fantasy VII Remake, the initial one at, I don't know if it was PSX or E3, and this one, they're playing towards the audience that already loves Final Fantasy VII, right? They're like, this is the game I remember and it looks good. We haven't really gotten anything for the story. I'm somebody who's never played Final Fantasy VII. I know there's a lot of people that haven't played Final Fantasy VII. Their next trailer, to me, needs to be a story trailer selling me on the story. Because if the combat doesn't look like I'm completely sold on it, like you said, hook me with the story. They're playing to an audience that already knows the story but wants to go through it again. They need to have something for the audience who's never played Final Fantasy VII. And I hope their marketing doesn't skew towards only the people they're trying to have played again,
Yeah, because I would assume they're aware of that fact that there's a whole generation of people that didn't grow up with the original game. So if they want to sell more copies, then they better try to sell to those people too.
Yeah, and it's it's like, it's obvious, but as we've seen with companies, sometimes the obvious just doesn't happen for some reason or another. Anyways, let's get to now one of my most anticipated games of the year. I'm super excited about this. Ghost Recon Breakpoint was revealed the same day as the PlayStation State of Play. Here's some information. I'm going to dump it on you. If you have any questions, just hop in. Dom, we're going to get through this, okay? We're going to make it. So it's an open world game. Obviously, it's a Ubisoft game. It's taking place on the island of Aroa. Hard name because I want to say Aurora every time I say it, but it's Aroa. So I'll explain the story setup real quick. So essentially, there was this tech billionaire named Jason Skell who worked for the government, and he created the self-driving car. He created drones, and very smart dude, technology company. Essentially, there comes a point where the drones accidentally kill a politician, and the UN votes to eliminate them, like they're inhumane, right? Aroa is the island or archipelago where Skell has all of his facilities. After the UN decision is made, they lose complete contact with him. So they send in the ghosts, right, to the top of the top, go in there, infiltrate, get Skell, figure out what's going down because they've lost complete contact. What happens is when they get there and they're getting ready to land and be covert, they're attacked. Their plane goes down. Your leading character with some of his other companions are alive, and instead of you being the hunter, you're now the hunted. And one of the major story beats is that you're not only dealing with Skell technologies and his droids and all that stuff, they've actually been compromised by another unit called the Wolves, which are former ghosts that have gone rogue, right? You're unsure if they're working with Skell or if they're not. They've adapted some of his drones to be kill drones. And so it's this big, massive island, and you're fighting between different enemy factions. So there's the wolves, there's the Skell tech stuff, and there's another group that I can't remember from the reveal that they talk about. I didn't write it down. So essentially you're fighting all of them. And turns out that the leader of the wolves is John Bernthal's character, which we'll get to later. I'm stoked that he's the main antagonist. Cole Walker. The cool thing is the most recent free update for Wildlands, the previous Ghost Recon game, is a mission in which you play a story with Cole Walker. So essentially, that mission in Wildlands is a prequel to this game. You see him when he was still a ghost on the quote-unquote good side. And Breakpoint, he's gone rogue, right? And in the story trailer, he's talking about everything that makes a ghost. And at the end, he's like, I'm a ghost too. Essentially, like, I know exactly who you are because I am you. Release date, October 4th, 2019. Great release date. I already talked about you're behind enemy lines, you're being hunted. There's an emphasis on survival, stealth, and customization. So in terms of stealth, you can move bodies Hitman-esque and hide them so you don't get found out. There's tons of customization options for your guns, your attachments.
Let me stop you. I want to ask one question. So this is, from everything I've gathered, this is a single-player open-world game.
This is, I'll get to that later. This is solo or four-player co-op. You can completely play it single-player. If you remember, Wildlands was pitched as either solo or four-player co-op. I personally played through that entire game solo and loved it. It plays as a solo game perfectly.
Okay, cool.
It's not... You can play Destiny alone, and it's fine, but it's not the same. The Ghost Recon games are different. They're like, yes, you definitely can play solo. There's a story...
I like the Destiny example because I still own Destiny too, and it's like, is it worth it playing alone? It's like, maybe, but you're not getting everything out of it you would if you were playing with people. It's kind of like if there was someone dumb enough to watch the sequel to Captain America and not watch the original one, you just wouldn't get as much out of it. So
yeah. So there's an emphasis on stealth. There's an emphasis on survival. One of the cool mechanics in the game is that you can get hurt. So if you get shot, you can get injured, and there's varying levels of injury. So there's like one where you're like kind of hurt and you're hobbling a little bit. There's one where like your leg is injured, like your leg is shot and you can't use your leg anymore, so you're dragging your leg behind you. And there's another level where you can get injured where you can't move at all. There's obviously items in the game to heal you, bandages and syringes and all that stuff, but you can be in a firefight and get hurt, and it completely changes your strategy, and it's really cool.
So they've been doing that in Fallout since as long as I can remember, and I've been surprised that we've not seen that kind of thing in more games, right? Because it makes sense, right? Obviously, like, too many games are, you just get shot and your health regenerates automatically, or a health pack, and like your whole body was fixed somehow. But this is such a cool part of gameplay where it's like that particular limb or whatever it is actually injured, and you have to deal with that, the repercussions of that, specifically. That's really cool. So that's cool to hear that it's in this one.
Well, the fact that it's third person, like the visual feedback of it is crazy. And you actually, I would argue that it has more impact in this game than in Fallout because you're in third person, right?
I could see that. It was kind of wonky in Fallout, a lot of the time anyway. So
as most things are, the Bethesda jokes, yeah. But it's a really cool mechanic to have in a game. Like we talked about earlier, it is solo and co-op. They're both viable and suggested. Through the whole discussion, the only thing that will require you to play with 3 other people is a raid that'll be coming later. And the way they talked about it, they made sure, in my opinion, they were talking about how it's different than like a raid in the Division or Destiny 2, where it's definitely more of a contained experience. It takes place on an active volcano, and they showed like teases of it. It looks super dope. And that's not at launch. That's like way down the road. But that's literally the only... They said that thing you can't play solo. You have to play with 4 people. Literally everything else, they're like, oh yeah, it's 100% solo. Like I said, I personally have experience with Wildlands, and I played through it solo, and it was awesome. Love that game. Wasn't a great game. It was a very solid, good game. I think this has the opportunity to be great with all of the stuff they've learned. A lot of the mechanics they've introduced, they said they got community feedback for. They announced that there's going to be 4 major expansions all coming 4 months apart. So 4 months after the release of this game, you get the first one. 4 months after that. 4 months after that. There's PvP in this game as well. 4v4 PvP. Completely separate from the open world game. But there's shared progression through all versions of the game. So you don't have to worry about, hey, I didn't spend time in this. Like, say I play all PvP, right? I'm really into that, and you play the single player, Dom. The time you invested in single player will transfer over to multiplayer. You don't have to like retread the steps of like upgrading your tools and upgrading your weapons and all of that stuff. It's all cross progression, which is great. There's 4 main classes at launch. From what I saw, it's the main like jack of all trades type character, right? There's the sniper class. There's a female character who seems like she's more stealth oriented in melee combat, and then there's a guy who's more explosives and like C4 and stuff like that. Your typical like archetypes for characters. One of the cool things with stealth that I didn't mention earlier is there's a tool you can use to cut through fences and get through, and it seems like it works on all fences. It's not like this is the fence cutting area as you see in some games, and you can use that tool to your disposal. There's obviously a drone you can throw up. There's tons of different tools. The bivouac. So the bivouac is a campsite, Dom. It's kind of like Red Dead's campsite, but not necessarily. So these are set places where you can set up a bivouac. So you can't just set up a camp everywhere. And it's the place where you change character classes, put different attachments on your guns. If you're out of health items, you can heal there if you choose to rest. It's also the hub where like all of you, if you're playing co-op, it's where all of you gather at. It's just kind of like a campsite, right? Like a hub. To me, it seems like you're not going to have because of the story of you getting thrown into this island where you're unfamiliar with everything, you're not going to have a base of operations, right? So I think the bivouac acts as that. They're these differing mobile hubs that you have throughout the world. What else here? I talked about there's a variety of environments. From what we saw in the trailer, there's like a forest area, there's a swamp, there's a deserty area, there's a beach area, there's the active volcano, there's like lush forests. It's really impressive, the differing environments they have in this game. One thing I didn't talk about, Dom, one of the stealth mechanics is, and I think it's going to work with water and other parts of nature, is he was laying in the mud and there was these soldiers coming up behind him, and he got the message like, hey, you have some soldiers coming up behind you patrolling. He's laying in the mud and he does a prone stealth mechanic where he turns to the side and covers his entire body in mud, and you go camo and you hide in it. So they're really cool stealth options. Really, really awesome. It seems like it's going to give you a variety of ways to play the game, which I'm happy about. The difference with this and Wildlands was completely a power fantasy. It was, you're in this country, you're the most skilled gunfighter in this area. A lot of these guys are like hired mobsters and drug dealers. You're just going through and wiping house with everyone, right? Really a strong power fantasy vibe. This one is turning that on its head. I think the whole theme of the game is that you're being hunted, you're in unfamiliar territory, you're constantly fighting. One of the things they said is that the AI is improved from the last game, where if AI notices you, they're not just going to like bumbly walk over to a tree in the middle of the forest by themselves. They'll actually group up with other AI and form a search party for you, and it's a lot more intelligent, which is really cool. And they also said that there's search parties throughout the world, so it's not, you're not just going to find enemies at specific static areas, right? There's like patrol enemies that are going around the world, and they could be simple like soldiers, like militia. It could be a pack of wolves, which are the former ghosts. It's interesting to see how that's going to play out. If it's like, you've played so many RPGs too, Dom. Usually in games with big open worlds, like, oh, this is the section of the map where there's the more difficult enemies. This is the section of the map where there's more like lower level enemies. I wonder if it's going to be where there's just patrols of varying difficulties, or if it is the typical, this section is where there's easier patrol units, this section is where there's a little bit more difficult. Who knows? I already mentioned cross progression, PvP, raid. Already talked about the stealth. One thing that people were worried about is they were worried that this was going to turn into another Ubisoft game that becomes an RPG, a la Assassin's Creed, right? And the game director was clearly asked this question. He's like, is this another Ubisoft game that's becoming an RPG? Is there going to be bullet sponges and everything? And he's like, no, this is a military shooter. If you shoot somebody in the head, they die.
It sounds so weird that has to be said.
And there isn't a whole lot of RPG mechanics in this game. It seems like this isn't something where you're leveling up your character. It's you're fine-tuning your guns and finding things that work for you, right? Maybe you'll upgrade, maybe not upgrade, but find tools and stuff like that. But they never once showed whenever they showcase an RPG game, they always make sure to go to the menu and show you the upgrade tree, right? That's like a staple of a reveal of an RPG. They didn't mention anything like that. They didn't do anything like that. I don't think that exists in this game. Ghost Recon Breakpoint went from a game that didn't exist 2 days ago to this being one of my most anticipated games this fall. Obviously, there's not a lot of games we know about coming out this fall, but with this and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, I'm super stoked. This has the edge on Fallen Order simply because we've seen actual gameplay for this game.
Right.
Once we see Fallen Order gameplay, I think that'll skyrocket to number one. This was a very impressive reveal, Dom. If you're itching for an open-world single-player game, I think this will hit the nail on the head. It looks awesome.
Yeah, no, this is cool. I'm impressed. It leaked a day or two before the.
Some of the details, John Bernthal being the main antagonist and it being called Breakpoint, yeah.
And it almost felt like an intentional leak, kind of. It was on their store or something. Anyway, yeah. It's cool that it's here's this game, and it looks as good as it does, and it comes out in a couple months. I don't know. I think this is an awesome. The reveal itself, you talked about, it looked good. The gameplay looked cool, but then the way they did it, I think was really cool too. I don't know if I'm gonna be in on it right away, but it's just not in the I don't know, realistic military shooter kind of feel lately. But who knows by then either.
By October, who knows?
Right, exactly.
You never know.
At the moment, I'm watching the gameplay, this looks like a better version of Wildlands or something. Or, I don't know. It looks cool, but I'm just. Yeah. I'm I don't know. It looks cool.
The great thing with the release date of October 4th is, in almost every way, it's the direct opposite of Borderlands 3, right? So, there's the Borderlands 3 audience, and then there's this audience, and, people can be interested in both. There's nothing wrong with that. I think Jordan would probably be one of those people that's interested in both, because Jordan loves Borderlands, and he also played Wildlands, right? I don't think he beat it, but I remember him playing it. I think he got it later in the year that year, and he had picked it up and played it a little bit. I'm stoked. I can't wait. Apparently we're going to learn more about specifically John Bernthal's character Cole Walker at E3. They said they're going to do PvP at Gamescom, and at E3 it's going to be more about the backstory of John Bernthal's character and probably your main character. But man, it took this long for somebody to cast John Bernthal as a villain in a video game. Oh man, between Shane and Frank Castle, you might not get this because you don't watch Punisher, Dom, but the main bad guy in Punisher is Billy Russo, the guy who becomes Jigsaw. So there's a meme of him going Russo, yelling for him. So people were posting pictures of his reveal on the trailer and posting Russo. It was really funny.
Nice.
Also, shout out to the Wolves costumes. They look like Metal Gear-esque. Their outfits look so badass. They're standing there and they just look like Metal Gear characters. So shout out to the influence, because they're probably not getting another Metal Gear Solid game for a while, if not ever. I'm just really excited about it. I love, and we're going to get this with E3, Dom, I love that in the span of 15 minutes you could not know about something and immediately be super excited about it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's awesome. With movies, with video games. Movies, we had a personal chat about this, how movies tend to talk about themselves way too early, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in advance. With video games, it sucks that so much of the stuff is private, but in a way it's great because we do get these things where 15 minutes into a reveal, I'm excited for Breakpoint, and an hour before that, I didn't even know the game existed, which is really awesome.
Plus, then we don't have to, hear about all the shit that doesn't work out and like stuff that gets canceled or whatever. It's like, I don't know. Sometimes it's like we probably never should have known that was a thing.
Exactly. And the beauty of gaming in 2019 is we're getting this game in 5 months. I don't imagine all the people that saw the Final Fantasy VII Remake reveal and are still waiting.
Yeah.
This is a game. I'm not trying to, compare them necessarily exactly, but like, there's a game I'm excited about that got announced that I'm getting in 5 months. That's awesome. That's really cool.
It's so simple but so beautiful.
So awesome! I can't wait. Anyways, let's hop into what we're gonna be. I was about to say what we've been playing. We already did that, Jerrad. What we're gonna be playing, finishing Sekiro. Dom, in terms of me getting to the Divine Dragon, am I close or far from where I said I was?
Well, like any From Software game, that's a question that has conditions, right? So you're geographically extremely close, but depending on how many the part you're about to go at can be difficult, depending on how you do it, and it might take you several tries, or 20 or 30 tries.
Really quick, I have 2 questions for you regarding Sekiro. Up to the point I'm at, so excluding the Divine Dragon because I have no base of experience with it, who was your favorite boss up until that point, and who was your hardest boss up until that point?
But hands down, hardest boss of any From Software game I've ever played is in this, and it's the second time you fight. This is spoilers, technically, so actually I don't know if I should say it. Whatever. Okay, so you already made the choice. I already know because you're at
I already fought Wolf once. I know we fought him twice. You accidentally spoiled that in the group chat, but like I didn't. It's no biggie. It's whatever. I assumed you'd probably fight him again. And
it's actually... I'll actually stop myself there. I won't tell you the conditions under which you fight him again because that's...
Yeah.
It's not what you think, maybe. But maybe it is. Anyway, yeah, you fight him again. Hardest boss fight of any Souls game ever. Or any From game. It was absurd. Like, I must have tried 50 times. I was like starting to like lose my mind, actually. Like I felt like I was just kind of like toying with the edge of sanity there for a while.
Shout out to the first time you fight him. Complete shock to me and surprise that he showed up again. I was like, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, the first time.
Yeah.
I was actually like, it was really easy for me. I think it was like 2 or 3 tries and I took him down. So it took
me a couple of tries to learn his mechanics because like the anti-heal thing, and then once he does the double ninja star like straight down attack, it's like super simple.
Yeah, it gets easy quick. That first one was the one that it's easy to learn those patterns, but the second time, man, it's just the simplest like attacks like take down. And I've played through the entire game having like pretty much maxed out health bar. Like I have like every prayer bead you can get and so on. But like his attacks just like would just drain your whole health bar almost every time, and that was super frustrating. And it was just so much faster, and the nuance between which attacks he was going to use were so small. So it was super hard to read him. But that's definitely the hardest.
Who's your favorite boss up until the point I'm at?
That he might also be my favorite. One move I felt was cheap, but that was just probably mostly out of frustration. Looking back, he might still be my favorite. If not him, then definitely Genichiro, because that one I spent a lot of effort trying to beat him. But every time I felt like I learned a little bit and got a little bit better each time, and it was always fun. There was even as it never got like super frustrating. It was always fun. It was always like, oh yeah, I just gotta get right back in. And now I know that when he leans that way, then I know to go this way, whatever it is, right? That was like the most fun I think so far was the fighting Genichiro.
So my favorite boss fight is Guardian Ape. I love that boss so much.
That one was awesome too.
Yeah. Hardest, I mean, I guarantee it's going to be somebody I haven't fought yet, i.e. Owl Fight number 2, Divine Dragon, something, right? The game hasn't been easy up until this point. It's just like no one's been way more difficult than others. It's kind of like a varying scale. If I had to choose, I would probably say Genichiro because he technically took me the most attempts, but I guess it's like with bosses, especially with Souls boss, like the moment you beat them, you're like, well, now that I know my strategy, it's not that hard, you know? You're like, you give yourself confidence, and I would surprise say Genichiro.
Changes. Yeah.
I would probably say Genichiro. Once again, I haven't fought Owl number 2 yet, so it'll probably be him.
You also don't have to, by the way. In fact, damn, dude, there's so much I can't say because I'll just say if you want to make sure that you fight every boss that is possible, even the optional ones, then you may want to consult a guide.
Question.
But you're going to spoil stuff for yourself if you do that, most likely. So it's
question. 2 questions real quick, and then we'll get to what you're going to be playing so we don't go too long on the podcast. 1, is the point of no return very obvious? Or have you not reached it yet?
There's not...
Well, there's a definitive end to the game.
Yeah.
You choose New Game Plus.
Okay, so yeah, there's definitely... I know that there's going to be a point where you explicitly choose to go into New Game Plus, but there are... So we've talked about how, like, in Ashina Castle, there's, different things that happen there after you beat certain bosses. Though there's, each of those is... I already told you, actually, the second one earlier is when you beat the Divine Dragon. So there are things that, once you do that, you move into a different stage, and certain things are no longer accessible.
Gotcha.
Each of those times, and then I think the same thing happens after you beat the final boss, where you're kind of in the end game, but then you can still mosey around after that before choosing New Game Plus, kind of a thing. So 2
quick questions. How did you make a separate save?
I don't know how you do it on Xbox, but on PlayStation, you can upload saves to the cloud. So you kind of normally all your games will automatically upload and just kind of have a backup in the cloud. So you have to
just copy it.
Yeah, so what you want to do is for a specific game, you want to turn off, the automatic cloud syncing, and then you can manually take a save and push it up to the cloud, and then later on you could pull it back down and overwrite your existing one, or you just plug a USB drive into the PlayStation and then you can copy saves onto that manually too.
Got it.
So, yeah, I know there's a way to do it on Xbox, but I'm not familiar with it.
Is there an achievement tied to beating the owl the second time?
Yeah, all the bosses,
specifically an achievement for him, not like beat all the bosses.
Yeah, definitely, because
then I'll probably try fighting him again.
Yeah, because you need I think there's an achievement for beating him, and then you have to fight him to get a certain ending, and there's an achievement for that too. So
got it. What are you going to be playing? Finishing Sekiro?
Yeah, hopefully by next week I'm done with Sekiro, and we were recently treated to What Remains of Edith Finch on PS Plus. And I've been hearing a lot of good things about that, and it's supposed to be pretty short too, so I'm going to definitely get into that as a palate cleanser, because next on the list is a little game, just a wee little game called Red Dead Redemption 2 that I started and then skipped, and now I'm finally going to go back, so yeah.
If and when you start What Remains of Edith Finch, tell me, because I have it on Game Pass now too. It'd be really cool, since it's not that long, I might want to play through it at the same time you do, and then we can both talk about it. So,
we should, yeah. So when I'm literally starting it, I'll send the message across. Like, by the way,
starting it up.
Yeah.
Is that everything?
That is it. Yep.
Oh, last thing, I'm gonna go watch Detective Pikachu. Really stoked. It's getting good reviews. Yeah. So I'm super happy about that. I can't wait to go watch it.
Man, I kind of want to. I probably won't see it in theaters, but I'll definitely take it. It'll hit Netflix or something, or I'll rent it later on. But I'm glad it's a cool thing, man. I'm glad people like it. It's kind of cool.
Apparently, Legendary stated that if this movie does well enough at the box office, which I'm assuming it's going to do because it's Pokemon, that they're interested in doing a movie about the Pokemon Red and Blue.
That could be cool.
I would be so in for. Oh my god. Yeah. Not necessarily Ash from the anime cartoon, but Red story from Red and Blue, right? They probably might just call him Ash to make it easier or whatever, but it'll be that specific storyline from the games. So, awesome. Potential for Pokemon Cinematic Universe, the PCU. That's pretty much it. Episode 146 next week. Jordan should be back. We're gearing up for E3. Going to be recording with some guests in the coming weeks, so tune in for that as well. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye.